I now invite Dr. Hermione Parsons to deliver the occasional address. Dr. Parsons has recently joined Victoria University as Associate Professor and Deputy Director of the Institute of Logistics and Supply Chain Management. Now, that's a really long title. What it means, she's really clever and she can do lots of things. She organises all the things that happen out there. In this role, she'll be responsible for development and delivery of the education and learning programs, together with developing industry and government management programs for the Institute of Logistics and Supply Chain Management. Dr. Parsons has significant public and private sector experience in logistics and supply chain management as the Manager of Port System and Logistics at the Port of Melbourne Corporation, managing the Freight, Transport and Logistics Division in the Victorian Government's Department of Innovation, Industry and Regional Development, and through executive management positions in the Melbourne wholesale fruit and vegetable markets, where she directed industry development projects for the Australian horticultural industry. Her doctorate thesis investigated corporate-led supply chains and structural adjustment in the fresh fruit and vegetables industry, and her master's thesis concentrated on issues affecting freight at the port-city interface. She has concentrated on applied business research and the problems faced by enterprises, governments and institutions in the delivery of goods and services between producers and commercial customers. Dr. Parsons has explored supply chains and transport issues in international and local markets and has served on many public and private special purpose agencies to deliver sustainable economic and social benefits to the people of Victoria. Please welcome Dr. Hermione Parsons.
It is a great honour for me to be speaking to you today, so thank you for the opportunity. It often interests me to find out how people arrive at their career choice and the role education plays, and so this is my story. My parents grew up in working class England in World War II. Their fathers were factory workers. My mother was very intelligent, but she was not allowed to go to high school because her father thought that high school girls would get pregnant and become single mothers. My father realised education was the way out. It was the way out of the village that they grew up in, it was the way out of England, and it was away from a class system that kept working class people down. Through scholarship programs, my father did architecture at Liverpool University and a master's in town planning at MIT in the United States. When I was 4, I remember playing doctors and nurses with all my friends. I was 4 years of age. And my father said, "Which are you playing, the doctors or the nurse?" I was in the nurse's outfit at the time, which I preferred. And he said, "Hermione, from now on, be the doctor." So I always knew I was going to university. In my family, the children were told that we went from kindergarten to primary school to high school to university. It was a natural progression. You didn't stop along the way. That's how we were brought up, and we all followed that path. For me, however, education was much more than a simple progression. Education for me means freedom of thought, and it's an avenue for my curiosity, and I'm very curious. I did honours geography at Monash, a dip ed, and then taught for a few years at Footscray High. In my late 20s, we decided we want to start a family, and I became pregnant with my first son. I was about to start work, and my father, there's a recurring theme here about my father's influence in my life. My father said to me, "Hermione, you're having a baby. Babies sleep all the time. You'll be really bored. Do a master's degree." So I thought, right, I don't want to do one in education because I wanted to play with new words. I wanted to have new ideas. So I did a master's in urban planning at Melbourne University. In effect, I had my first child while I did my master's degree, and I had my second child while I did my PhD. It worked in really well in terms of career development. It was around this time that I started to find my career and my way forward. Each morning when I was doing my master's degree, I'd put the little babies in the pram. We lived down at Newport, and we'd walk along the Strand so I could lose weight and we'd get healthy and all those sorts of things. And we were across the way from Webb Dock, You know how at Williamstown you look onto the bay into the city. And I would look at Webb Dock. I'd see all the massive container cranes. I'd hear the noises. Occasionally you'd hear a container drop and the thud on the ground with this massive box dropping. And it just got me so curious. Huge international container ships from Russia, China, Mexico were piloted by tugboats along the Maribyrnong River up to the port of Melbourne. And my sons and I would stand at the pontoon out in the river, waving madly to the crew, the ship's crew. They were pretty bored. They'd come out to the deck and they'd wave back to us, so we thought it was a really good day. Very exciting. They were always nice to us. But I was so curious about the boxes on these ships. They were stacked high. Each ship was stacked so high with these boxes. They were different colours. There were about 6,000 containers per ship. There are now 9,000, 10,000. What did they carry? How were they held on to the ship? How did they not fall off in high seas? What was the system of moving and distributing them? Who owned them? And sort of that was it. I'd found my way. I'd found supply chain and logistics and international trade and international freight. And this type of career concerns ships and trucks and trains and infrastructure and ports, IT systems, business relationships, massive investment and corporate capital. When I started my PhD, Australia was in recession and we had 2 small children to care for. My thesis explored the fresh fruit and vegetable industry, wholesale markets, refrigerated distribution and other glamorous things like that, and major retailers. My primary research involved interviews with hundreds and hundreds of growers in the fruit and vegetable industry, wholesalers and retailers across the country and across the world. Each morning I'd arrive at the Melbourne wholesale fruit and vegetable markets just down in Footscray Road at about 2 o'clock in the morning to do my interviews. That fitted in well with my children because they were asleep. There were about 4,000 people working there. Approximately 3 were women. There was me, there was the daughter of a potato grower, and there was a Vietnamese vegetable grower from South Australia. That leaves a lot of men. My studies have continually taken me into male-dominated, non-traditional female industries, and the men have always been very kind and welcoming and supportive. I've worked in the fishing industry, the logging industry, the farming industry, trucking, stevedoring, wholesaling and finance. And I've travelled the world working in supply chain. Study, research and education have allowed me to think, to develop an unusual career path, to follow my curiosity and to explore one exciting industry and one exciting world after another. Fundamentally, my career is in researching and understanding